Today's AskReddit post. Worst part of being a kid was not having adults take you seriously when you knew what you were talking about. What is an example of this that happened to you as a child? Oh boy, this is gonna be a good one. Let's get started. I once bought a game and when I opened it outside the shop it had no disc in it. I went back and they didn't believe me, so I argued with them for at least 30 minutes before they tried to kick me out, saying I was scamming them. After about an hour, they kept telling me to leave and get out of the way and trying to then ignore me. In total I got them to check the CCTV and the manager hadn't put the disc in the case. They were separate to stop thieves. Without a word he got a copy and threw it at me and stormed off. Manager was trying to scam himself a copy on the sly. Pretty good game, though. SLPT. If you have to scam somebody, might as well be a kid who will likely not notice until it's too late. I had a birthmark that was displaying all the classic signs of skin cancer, but every time I tried telling my mum about the concerning symptoms, she brushed me off. She didn't even look. Eventually after 3-4 weeks I was taken to see a doctor and the situation then escalated very quickly. Long story short, I ended up having a cancerous tumor the size of an orange removed from the area below my birthmark. The doctor had many stern words with my mother after that and I was monitored for a while. Did your mother ever apologize for not listening to you in the first place? I've seen a situation like this unfolding. I was doing security at the local hospital. Some addict tried to run off. I was called in, go keep an eye on her, and around 3 AM a mother comes in yelling that she needs to see a doctor with a young boy, maybe 10 or 12, who was just drenched in vomit and blood. They took the boy in and had him checked out. The whole time the kid was intermittently crying and screaming that he'd been telling his mother he'd been feeling bad all week and had been asking to be taken to the hospital. Apparently the mother had waited till she saw him actually projectile vomiting blood with her own eyes before she took it seriously. The doctor took her a couple rooms away after the boy was stabilized and yelled at her for almost an hour, saying that she should have taken him to be checked out at the first sign that something was wrong. The boy had been telling her about his vomiting for days and said that, while he can't know for certain till they do some scans, his diagnosis from what he'd seen was stomach cancer, and this isn't in America, so that the mother couldn't risk going to the hospital unless absolutely necessary because of the bills. Reasoning doesn't work. This is in Australia, where healthcare is pretty cheap. Figured it wasn't the US because I've never heard of a doctor pulling aside a parent to yell at them. It's far from standard practice here in Australia too, but this really got under the doc's skin. I remember being into space as a kid and telling my mum's drug addict boyfriend that the sun is a star. The dumb cunt refused to believe I was right. Fuckface. The sun is a star, everyone knows that. You would be horrified how many don't know that. Even more so how many you won't convince. The sun is not a star, silly. Stars don't change into the moon at night. Please stop. Asterisk. Complained about stomach aches every morning for a week and my parents thought I just wanted to skip school. The next weekend they wanted to set me straight, so I was taken to the doctor. Turned out I had hepatitis A. At least it took you a week. 3 and 1/2 years to get me in front of a doc for my Crohn's diagnosis. Just straight up neglect at that point. When I was in middle school I needed glasses because I couldn't see the board. I told my parents. They said I was looking for attention. I brought binoculars to school so I could see. They didn't take me to an optometrist until the school nurse did rudimentary eye exams on every student in the school and wrote my parents that I needed glasses. Same thing happened with braces. My dentist had been hinting for years that I needed braces and they didn't take me to an orthodontist until he wrote a referral to one who was just down the street. I had crooked teeth and an entire adult set for years at that point. My sister faked bad eyesight when she was young, because of which they believed I was lying as well. It was only after every single teacher of mine said her child is blind after they got my eyes tested. I've been wearing glasses for 10+ years now, and I can't see shit without them. Not really as a child, but when I was 14 I had severe side pain from a kidney stone and my parents didn't take my pain seriously until after a few days, and by that time I was literally on my knees begging them to take me to the ER. If your kid starts begging you to take them to the ER, Please listen to them. I was an adult and my, now ex, also abusive fiance at the time refused to believe something was wrong when I had a kidney stone, despite the fact I was vomiting from the pain. Thank God we were living at my parents' and my mom heard me ralphing, saw me sweating and white as a sheet and took me to the ER. She had seen my dad pass them before and knew the look. Also, she is a retired nurse. A parent should know the difference between faking it and that level of pain. You aren't yourself when in that much discomfort. Tried to tell them my knee was bothering me. Was told it's just growing pains. Finally go in about 2 years later. Got a scope done. And doc says, man, if we wouldn't have caught this earlier we could have avoided the surgery. When I was a child my growing pains were so bad I couldn't walk. I cried daily for months and months at a time and I would sit up all night massaging my ankles. My mom said it was just growing pains and I was just being a baby about it. Fast forward many years and now my son, 6 at the time, had growing pains so bad the same thing was happening. I kept him home from school and took him to have x-rays. He has a genetic condition he apparently got from me where when he grows, the growth platelets don't do what they should and it hurts like a bitch. He had to be in a boot, then a cast for almost 6 months. You equals good parent. Thank you. I try my hardest every day. Felt sick as hell but forced to go to school. Ended up throwing up and having severe food poisoning for the next few days. Those were some bad nights. The funk did you ate? Username. Profile picture checks out. Oh no. In the 6th grade I fell on my roller skates. I was sure I'd broken my wrist but my mother, a radiologist technician, the woman literally takes rays of broken bones for a living, told me I was just faking it for attention. A week later and it was still swollen. I couldn't write correctly, and my PE teacher wasn't letting me participate and he sent home a note that finally prompted my mother to take me into the doctor. Come to find out I definitely had broken my wrist and was in a cast for 8 weeks. Medical professionals in your family are the worst to go to when you're ill. A few months ago I started feeling very faint, got very pale, dizzy, the whole 9 yards. Super classic anemia. My grandfather, a doctor, swore up and down nothing was wrong, that it was in my head, etc. A blood test later that week showed I had a pretty extreme case of anemia. I had less than half the amount of blood iron that a person at the very bottom of the normal spectrum should have. He still won't admit that anything could be wrong with me. I don't know what to call that kind of mental block. Honestly, my mom is a nurse and I don't have this problem. If I've been hurt and she isn't absolutely certain that I'll be okay, she takes me to a clinical office. For instance, I get strep about once a year and know the signs at this point. So I tell her I have strep. She takes me to an office. They test me, and I get the medicine. I just wish that parents would be more willing to get their child treated even if they are medical professionals. If your child is hurting for more than just a day, get them checked out. Sounds nice. My dad is a paramedic and never believes me when I'm ill or in pain. I told my mom when my dad was abusing me and she didn't believe me, or didn't want to, and since that was exactly what he had said would happen if I told, I never tried again. Then when I told her again in my 20s after I cut him out of my life, she asked me over and over if I was sure, and didn't stop until her constant asking caused the worst panic attack I've ever had in my life. Thank you to the couple of people who will read this comment. It feels nice to know that somebody knows, and hopefully somebody believes me. I believe you. I hope you're safe now. Begging my parents for help with my mental health. At age 12 I knew I had anxiety and depression. I told my parents and they shrugged it off. It took a suicide attempt for them to realize it wasn't anything they could ignore. Parents are ducking idiots if it comes to depression. This is one of the reasons I'm so glad to have my parents. My little sister was showing signs of depression and my mom sat her down and talked to her a bit about it. Turns out she wasn't depressed, but was going through some stuff at school. My siblings had built a wily coyote ladder of random stuff from our backyard to get to the roof so they could jump from the roof onto our trampoline. I asked if I could do it but being like 6 they said no, that I would get hurt. And because I was 6 I decided this was grounds to tattle. I went straight inside and told out parents exactly what was going on, and it was so ridiculous that not only did they not believe me, they didn't even bother checking. They wouldn't find out for another 7 years when I brought it up again as a fun memory during dinner. Let me guess, when your parents finally did check, the ladder had already disappeared because of an evil scientistinator which was intended to help take over the tree state area. Honestly, Candace, I worry about you sometimes. 2 dudes asking for directions but still didn't believe me when I told them that the shortest way has a FCK ton of dogs. One lost a finger and the other lost a bag. It took me reading this a few times to realize you literally meant a pack of dogs blocked it. Where was this? I'm going to guess Brazil. Wouldn't be out of place in Brazil. He's active in the Philippines subreddit. My mom was convinced earthworms were the same as parasitic worms and called me a rude smartass when I tried to explain that the earthworm I was holding was not gonna burrow under my skin. I tried explaining to my mother that not all snakes, especially the ones at zoo, are not poisonous and they do not want to kill everything it sees. She still fears them and calls me smartass. If she had a phobia of snakes then it probably doesn't matter how safe they are. Oh, and her phobia of snakes is quite extreme. She doesn't even call them snakes. She refers to them as long things. Like about this now. But things like phobias were too complicated for ATO me. Haha snack go brr. Begged my parents to not send me to school as I wasn't feeling well. It was photo day, so understandably they sent me because they thought I was lying to get out of it. Got the photos back and can see the chicken pox around my neck. That's kind of wild to me. I don't remember feeling at all ill from chickenpox. Just incredibly itchy. Depends on the age you get it. I got it at around 12 years old. I got the nerve pain that is common in adults that get it. I remember lying on the bed screaming that my skin hurt. I felt like I was being flayed. But since I was still just a kid, everyone was telling me that I am just looking for attention and that the itching can't be that bad. I was well into my 20s before I actually realized that most people don't know how bad chickenpox can be once you've hit puberty. Still happening at 40. A guy was just thinking that. My boss just did this to me this week. I've got a master in electrical engineering. My parents, until recently, refused to let me fix things. A professional should do it. Like WTF did you spend all that money on my education for? I was homesitting for 2 weeks and when they returned, I had repaired several things that were bothering me. I tend to stay there a lot. My mother was genuinely impressed with something she should have known to be true for more than 10 years. Now she actually asks me to fix stuff. My grandparents went to Australia for a year. Whilst they were gone, my mother was asked to drop by to check on their house, but would often just wait in the car and have me go in. One time I noticed that the next door neighbors, who were building an extension, had taken down the dividing fence and put scaffolding into my grandparents' garden. I told my mother, who brushed it off as imagination. The next time, they'd fully started to build on my grandparents' land, destroying my grandfather's prized rhubarb patch. I told my mother, and same thing happened. By the time my grandparents came home, the extension was fully built and had been for months. My grandma was so annoyed at my mother for not doing anything to stop this. But I think they were so kind. They didn't do anything about it and the neighbors got away with it. Damn shame if someone accidentally lit that extension on fire. Damn shame. And to think the owners are in Australia. I begged my parents that we stop in Paris as we drove back to the UK from our holiday, and whilst we were there we visited the Eiffel Tower. We parked nearby and from the top I could see our car being towed. I told my parents but they wouldn't listen. They thought I was joking, and being young I assumed their response meant it wasn't a big deal. Luckily, our car was some 4x4 thing, not good with the breeds of cars, so the towing guys were still trying to move it. They told us to get out of the city ASAP as it was about to be locked down. Later in life I discovered on that day there was an assassination attempt on the French president. Probably all-wheel drive, not 4x4. To put it simply, It's similar but better than 4x4 as it's always on. Towing an odd vehicle is more of a pain. You have to use a flatbed truck to place it on, not one of the tow trucks that just raise one side. Otherwise you damage the very expensive transmission, which the tow company is liable replacing when they destroy it by towing improperly. You're right. I think it probably was an odd. As we arrived at the car, a flatbed with a crane was just prepping to take it away. Telling my mom she should learn how to use a computer because it wasn't just a phase. I'd just like to throw in my 2 cents that this could be advice for most adults. Developing technology is rarely just a phase, it's actually the direction the world is going. I realize that owning and learning how to use various electronics, especially when there can be so many, might seem like overkill. But honestly, you need to at least keep up with knowing about the tech that's out there. Eventually a lot of these things will become commonplace, expected, and while no one will force you to own or use them, you might be left behind if you've ignored the trends. This is so important when it comes to people who think they don't need email, or who just refuse to learn how to use a computer. Even for basic things like email and online shopping, you never know what will happen in your life. If there's even a slight chance that you could be searching for work in today's job market, you'll need an email and you'll probably need to know how to operate a computer, type, use a mouse, open a search engine. Kindergarten. Needed to pee. Teacher. No you don't. Teacher. 5 minutes later. Struggling to peel off my pee-soaked stockings. Also kindergarten. Needed to throw up. Teacher. No you don't. Immediate result. Bright orange vomit on Christmas green carpet. To this day I find the obsession with preventing kids from going to the bathroom at school really ducked up. I'd always hoped it would make sense to me when I got older, but it doesn't. It's just messed up. I once asked to go to the bathroom on high school. I had a runny nose and no tissues. Substitute teacher said no. There's already too many girls in the bathroom. Told my mom about it later, who told me if I need to go to the bathroom for any reason, I go. Teachers be damned. Grade 2 teacher initially refused to let me do a diorama on the epoch for an animal project because she didn't realize it was an actual animal. It took me bringing in a printed article on it to convince her to let me do it. To be fair to her though, I didn't use its more well-known name of the water opossum. To be more fair, I've still never heard of it. Me neither. My mom never believed me when I said we shouldn't water our indoor plants every day, especially not in winter. 3 pots of dead plants later, she might have started to come around, but I kinda hated her a little more by then. The old, I need acne medication for years. From being 12-17, I had horrible acne and kept asking to go to the doctors about it. My parents just kept saying nonsense. I had acne much worse than you when I was younger. They didn't. At 17, when I could drive, I went to the doctors on my own. Got some tablets etc. The doctor was surprised I hadn't been in earlier, and within 6 months no more spots. Never had acne since. Very frustrating that I had years of pain, soreness, bleeding and looking like shit, when it was completely avoidable. I will have scarring from it for the rest of my life. My kids won't. That's for sure. People forget acne isn't always just a superficial problem, and it isn't just teenagers being vain. That shit, especially cystic acne, ducking hurts. There were times I could lay on one side of my face because some of the spots hurt so bad. And you know what? Even if it is just a superficial problem, that's still a problem because it can really do a number on your self-esteem. Maybe wanting to look your best is a little vain. So what? It's also a natural human impulse. I have no doubt that acne actively made my depression worse. Up until I finally went on Accutane in my mid-20s. I constantly had one cystic acne pimple. As soon as it would start to go away I would feel another one begin flaring up. It wasn't particularly painful, but it sucks to supposedly be in your physical prime and having like 2 days in a month you actually get to feel attractive because the other 28 you have to spend 15 minutes every morning turning this week's guest into a colorless lump instead of an angry red lump. At least girls can use makeup. Most guys are not comfortable with that. But then we're also judged more harshly based on appearance than guys. So it's probably a wash on how shitty acne is for both genders. This rant brought to you by parents who wouldn't take their teenage daughter to a dermatologist because her acne wasn't as bad as her father's in his adolescence. I hate the argument I had X thing worse than you when I was your age, so screw you. So what? You may have had it worse, but you can totally avoid your kids going through pain or other stuff. Bro, you actually watched the whole video. I'd give you a high five if I was a human. Make sure to click the like button and subscribe for more great content. See you next time.